Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is a story of what if Naruto and Sasuke was like Hashirama and Madara. Naruto and Sasuke will be strong. Naruto will have a wood release and he is a Senju. Sasuke will, as you all know, an Uchiha. Now let's start the story. Chapter 13. Sasuke scoffed to himself. Somehow, he felt like he'd drawn the short straw. Naruto was probably having a much more interesting fight than him and Kakashi. After all, you couldn't really call this a fight, chasing after that Deidara guy. I think this is far enough, they heard Deidara say, before spinning around and launching 8 clay projectiles at Kakashi and Sasuke, who dodged to the sides just in time for the clay birds to explode. Sasuke, did you see it? Kakashi asked as the two landed next to each other on the ground, looking up at Deidara through the trees. Yeah, seems like he's a one-trick pony, too, so this should be easy. Don't get too cocky, Sasuke. He's an S-rank ninja for a reason, Kakashi muttered, staring up at Deidara with his Sharingan. Now, I hope you're not going to be reluctant to strike such a handsome opponent. Sasuke blinked at that and glanced at Kakashi. Was that a gay joke? Maybe. Besides, how would you know handsome? Never mind. Let's just focus on this fight. Hey, stop ignoring me or you'll pay for it, Kakashi and Sasuke only just then noticed the clay bird between them. Their eyes widened just as it exploded. Deidara gave a bark of laughter as he stared down at the cloud of smoke that rose from the explosion. I'm disappointed. I expected more from Itachi's little brother, Deidara's eyes widened when a blade was suddenly placed at his throat, a chikudo to be exact. He looked over his shoulder, to see Sasuke standing behind him on the bird, holding the sword with his Sharingan blazing. Then I'll have to put on a good show, won't I? TCH. According to reports, you use explosive clay to attack, but I haven't seen nearly as many explosions as were reported from your attack on the cage, Sasuke said, a smirk appearing on his face. I'm guessing you don't have too much clay left. Is that so, Deidara asked, smirking as well. What do you think you're standing on, moron? Sasuke glanced down, to see that his feet had sunk into the bird. He tried to pull them out, but it was like hardened cement. When he looked up at Deidara again, his eyes widened upon seeing the former Iwa ninja also turning into clay. Katsu was heard from the trees below, and both Deidara and the bird blew up. Sasori looked emotionless, but anyone could see in his eyes that he was at least a bit irritated. Slowly, he reached up and started unbuttoning his coat. It really has been a long time, he said slowly, before taking off his coat, making Naruto, Hinata, and Chiyo's eyes widen, since I used myself. Sasori's entire body was that of a puppet. He had 4 long blades on a mechanical arm sticking out of either side of his lower back, a holder for 4 scrolls on his back, a stinger on a spool of rope in the empty and open stomach cavity, some kind of compartment in the right side of his chest, and a piece of flesh stuck in the left side of his chest, which had the kanji for scorpion painted on it. He turned himself into a puppet. Naruto muttered in amazement. I thought it was strange that he hadn't aged a day since the last time I saw him, Chiyo mumbled gravely. His chakra is flowing from that thing in his chest. Hinata said softly, focusing her Byakugan on Sasori. I think that is what is keeping him alive. Sasori raised his hands, showing 2 metal tubes sticking out of his palms. Naruto and Hinata only had a second to go wide-eyed, before they both had to dodge a stream of white-hot flames shooting out of each tube. Suiten. Sujin Heki. Naruto called out after forming a set of seals, spitting out a large amount of water, which formed a wall in front of him, blocking the stream of fire, while Hinata and Chiyo did a very good job of dodging. What's wrong? Sasori said as the fire died down, and one of the scrolls on his back disintegrated. Too hot for you. Without waiting for a response, Sasori leaned back, and the stinger shot out of his stomach, heading straight for Naruto at an amazing speed. What he didn't expect was for Naruto to lash out with his leg, kicking the stinger into the air, before lashing out and grabbing the rope. Mistake, Naruto concluded with a grin, before giving the rope a yank. Sasori was sent hurling toward Naruto, who cocked his fist back as he packed it with chakra. However, the blades on Sasori's back started spinning and moved forward, so that they were spinning protectively in front of the puppeteer. Naruto's fist clenched, the chakra packing into and casting a shockwave that cracked the ground. Time it right. Naruto yelled in his mind as the puppet came flying toward him. His fist rocketed toward the redhead, and he watched almost in slow motion as it neared Sasori, slipping right between two of the spinning blades and smashing into Sasori's chest. Sasori was smashed into pieces, the punch scattering them all over the cave with the force of it. Gotcha, Naruto said triumphantly, grinning. Well done, Naruto-kun. Hinata praised with a smile as Naruto turned around and walked over to her and Chio. Thanks. Sorry you didn't get to fight the Sandame. I guess I'm just a glory hog, Naruto said, scratching the back of his head sheepishly. He blinked, however, when his senses picked up on movement, and he spun around to see the pieces of Sasori moving across the ground, gathering together and slowly reforming his body. Senju Naruto. Sasori muttered as his head reattached itself to his body. I never thought I'd have to use this technique against a single shinobi. He took a scroll off his back and tossed it into the air. It unfurled, and he opened the compartment on the right side of his chest, sending out hundreds of chakra strings as a massive amount of smoke exploded from the scroll. When it cleared, the team went wide-eyed. Floating above Sasori was at least 100 different puppets, and Naruto could bet that each and every one of them had at least one poison-coated blade hidden somewhere on them. How is that? Naruto muttered, screwing his eyes shut and shaking his head. When he opened his eyes again the puppets were still there, so he clearly wasn't imagining it. Scratch that, I'm not going to ask if it's possible, since it clearly is, but are you freaking kidding me? How am I going to explain this? Sasori muttered, burying his face in his palm and looking genuinely embarrassed. How long it took me to take down two brats and an old hag. That I even had to take out my last trick. He looked up, a deadened and very dangerous look in his eye. Akahichi. Hyaki no Suin, Red Secret Technique. Performance of 100 puppets. I will show you its power. Chio reached into a pouch on her hip and took out a scroll, unrolling it and slamming her hands together. Out of the scroll, 10 puppets were summoned into existence, and Naruto had to admit that they looked a lot more badass than Sasori's puppets. Right, Naruto said with a grin. Guess we've got more soldiers on our side now. Alright. He punched his fist into his palm. Let's do this, dangerous, dangerous. Sasuke muttered, landing on top of a tree and patting his smoldering right sleeve. Guess that's what I get for getting a big head. Almost got you, Uchiha Sasuke, HN. Sasuke looked to his right, so see Deidara floating on another clay bird, smirking at the Uchiha. You did, Sasuke admitted. But how do you know I didn't just do that to lure out the real you? Deidara snorted at that. Are you expecting me to buy that? Even if you survived the explosion, you really expect me to believe you'd risk your life just to lure me out? Well, my life was never really in danger. The only risk was that I might get burned, Sasuke said with a smirk. The main purpose of that stunt was not only to lure out the real you, but also to take your mind off of Kakashi. This statement made Deidara blink. Wait, what? Suddenly, a lightning-covered hand burst out of Deidara's chest, making his eyes widen in surprise and pain as he looked over his shoulder, to see Kakashi standing behind him, his Sharingan spinning slowly in its socket. Wyu. Deidara hissed, raising his hand slowly and forming a half-ram seal. He was shocked, however, when Sasuke's sword came flying through the air, piercing the clay bird. Electricity was arcing along the blade. It's no use trying to blow us up, Kakashi said calmly. We have already read your techniques with our Sharingan. We're using our Raiden Jutsu to nullify your Doden Jutsu. Your bombs are duds. TTCH. G goddamn Sharingan, bastards. Deidara growled out, glaring from Kakashi to Sasuke. I'll get you. HN. That's not going to happen, Kakashi said simply. Sasuke. Right. Sasuke jumped, crossing the distance between them. As he landed on the clay bird, he stepped toward Deidara and grabbed his sword. The blade flashed, and the next second Deidara's head was flying through the air, separated from the body with a look of utter shock on his face. Immediately, the clay bird stopped flapping its wings and started falling toward the ground. Kakashi leapt off, taking Deidara's body, while Sasuke jumped off to grab Deidara's head in the air. I guess he was too dangerous to bring back alive, Kakashi reasoned as he lay the body down on the ground and pulled his hand out of it. But we'll have to bring the body back to Konoha for study, at least. Yeah, Sasuke said, landing next to Kakashi and setting down the head. Let's seal it up and go help the others. Do you really think they need it? Better safe than sorry. One of 100 puppets was smashed to bits just a couple of feet away from Hinata, who gave Naruto, the one who had smashed it, a grateful look. Thank you, Naruto-kun. I missed that one. In this crowd, that can be forgiven, Naruto said with a grin, flashing through hand seals. Mokuton. Hoyu no Niwa, wood element, embracing garden. Several thorny wooden vines burst from the ground and wrapped around 20 of the attacking puppets, crushing them to pieces. As Naruto focused on the technique, 2 more puppets came at him from the side, but before they could reach him, Hinata blurred into view and cut the chakra string holding them with her jukin. Hake Kusho, 8 trigrams vacuum palm, she called out, lashing out with a palm thrust at the 2 puppets, blowing them away with what appeared to be a gust of wind. Chio Ba, how are you holding up? Naruto asked the old lady, who leapt over to land next to him, her fingers moving with a surprising grace for someone her age. I'm feeling a bit stiff and tired, but I suppose that's something that comes with age, she admitted. Naruto-kun, you will need to go for Sasori. If you take him out, none of these puppets will pose any danger. From what I can tell, Naruto-kun, it is that piece of flesh in his chest that is keeping him alive, Hinata said, blocking an attack and countering with a jukin strike. Go, we can handle this. Naruto grinned and charged forward, swerving between the attacking puppets and dodging as best he could. He gritted his teeth when he felt a blade cut up his cheek, and another cutting him in the shoulder. Nonetheless, he kept up his charge, heading straight for a surprised Sasori. Just die already. Naruto barked as he held out his hand. A ball of wildly spiraling chakra formed above his palm as he sped between 2 puppets and crossed the distance to Sasori, who only had time to go wide-eyed before the blonde slammed the ball into the piece of flesh in his chest with a cry of, Rasengan. He didn't cry out in pain, however. Perhaps he simply couldn't feel pain. In any case, he maintained the surprised look as his body was once more blown to pieces. This time, though, the flesh wasn't just sent flying. It was completely shredded by the attack, spattering the walls of the cave with tiny pieces of flesh. Immediately, the 50 or so remaining puppets stopped moving, dropping lifelessly to the ground. Feeling confident enough to relax a bit, Naruto let out a sigh. This fight took way too long. Naruto-kun. Hinata uttered, watching Naruto cautiously as she approached him. Slowly, he sank down on one knee, exhaling once more. This is one damn potent poison, he mumbled. Hinata, you made antidotes, right? Why yes. Please, hold still, and I'll administer it right away. Slowly, Naruto's gaze drifted toward Gaara's lifeless body, which was laying by the wall of the cave. Amazingly, it hadn't been disturbed by the battle that had taken place. It's a shame we were too late, he said softly as Hinata stuck him with an auto-injector, which pumped the antidote into his bloodstream. He was way too young for this. Chio made her way over, looking tired but still fit for another bout. Her gaze was sad as she looked at Gaara, her brow furrowing. I am the reason why this happened, she said softly. I was the one who performed the jutsu that sealed the shukaku inside Gaara. If it wasn't for that, he would have led a good life. And he wouldn't have been targeted by the Akatsuki. Don't blame yourself, Naruto muttered, rising to his feet with Hinata's help. There's nothing you can do now. There is one thing I can do, Chio said slowly. An old hag's way of making up for her mistakes in life, I suppose. What do you mean? Naruto asked curiously. I have a jutsu that I had been saving for Sasori, should he ever need it, Chio said. It's a Tensei ninjutsu, life transfer technique. It can save Gaara. It was a week later that found Naruto sitting at Ichiraku Ramen with Sasuke. He was grinning happily to himself while waiting for his ramen to be served. Well, at least now we know we're ready for the Akatsuki, he said, flashing Sasuke a thumbs up. During our first encounter with them, we killed 2, and we defeated Itachi, even if it was just a strange clone with less power. It doesn't sound as impressive when you say it like that, though. Sasuke muttered. The only difference, I think, is that if he'd been at full power, it would have just taken a bit longer. Maybe, Sasuke said, nodding slowly. Still, I can't shake the feeling that he was just playing with us. You sure that's not just because he's your brother? Like, some inborn, permanent suspicion that he's purposefully being a dick against you in particular. Sasuke blinked at that and gave Naruto a strange look. In response, the blonde shrugged. Hey, I don't know. I've never had a blood brother, remember? I don't know how those relationships work. Speaking of relationships, I've noticed that you've been getting a lot of female attention lately, Sasuke said with a smirk. I guess now that I'm off the market, they're settling for the second best, eh? This earned him a glare from Naruto. You do realize that I can break your face with a flick of a finger, right? Point taken. But while we're on the topic, has anyone caught your interest yet? Naruto wanted to know, to which Sasuke scoffed. Why would I tell you? You've probably got 10 scathing jokes all lined up. Well, they're just jokes. But if you're insistent, I'll keep them to myself. I seriously do want to know if I'll have a prospective brother-in-law soon. Well, you wouldn't really be brothers-in-law, since we're not actually related. Well, we should be. Naruto barked. We did the blood pact, we've grown up together, we're about as close as we could possibly get without sharing parents. Plus, we'll be doing that clan alliance once I become head, so there's that as well. I think I have the right to call any guy you fall for my brother-in-law. Sasuke smiled softly as Ichiraku set down their ramen bowls in front of them. I guess that's true. And it's not like I mind. And for your information, yes. Oh ho. Naruto grinned widely. So, anyone I know. If you say Guy, or Lee, I'm going to have to break all of your bones. God no. No, it's not anyone you know, I think, Sasuke said, shaking his head. You know Yama-san at the weapons shop. I thought you weren't into older men. His son, you moron. He's been giving me glances. Oh. You mean Takeshi? Yeah, he's a good guy. Didn't know he leaned that way, though. I'm not totally sure if he does, Sasuke muttered. You know, it's really hard for a gay guy to find someone. For straight people, it's easier. Just look for someone who doesn't have the same reproductive organs as you and your set, but this. I don't know who is available and who isn't. Right. Naruto downed his ramen in record time, paid for the meal, and then dashed off, leaving a blinking Sasuke staring after him. He just ate one bowl. Ichiraku asked in surprise. That's rare. Wonder what got into him. Sasuke muttered, frowning. Though I'm getting this feeling like I need to beat him up for something. Sasuke sat there in puzzled silence for only a few minutes before Naruto came running back to the ramen stand, taking a seat and ordering another bowl. Within moments, the ramen was served, and Naruto wasted no time wolfing it down. Ah, that was good. Another. Naruto said, setting down the bowl with a grin. He looked at Sasuke to see the Uchiha staring expectantly at him. What was that all about? Oh yeah, I totally forgot. Naruto said and gave Sasuke a thumbs up. I went to see Takeshi. You read his signals correctly. He's interested. This made Sasuke go wide-eyed in shock. Yeah, I went and talked to him for you. To Naruto's amazement, the punch that he had been expecting never came. Instead, Sasuke's face turned steadily more red, and then a thud echoed through the ramen stand as Sasuke slammed his face down on the counter in embarrassment. What, was that not all right? A chink was heard as Sasuke's Chikudo clicked out of its sheath. Nah, Ru, too. Tsunade sat in a smaller meeting room in the Hokage Tower, a room she was sure her predecessor and sensei had spent many hours in, with the very same people who were sitting across from her right now, no doubt. So, Homura-asan, Kaharu-ba, what did you need? Tsunade asked in a professional tone of voice, but she knew that the two would try to push their outdated way of doing things onto her. They would try to make her do what they wanted. Some things never changed, after all. Tsunade, we need to talk about Senju Naruto, Homura said seriously. Somehow, I get the feeling you are going to propose something ridiculous, Tsunade muttered. Do not send Naruto on missions that have a possibility of contact with Akatsuki, Homura said. And from now on, appoint high-ranking shinobi to watch Naruto. Assign him to 4-man teams to reinforce our supervision and guard over him. Also, you should decrease his amount of missions as much as possible, Kaharu added, and restrict the range of his movements. Tsunade snorted loudly as she leaned back in her sofa. That is ridiculous, she said, waving them off. Tsunade, Naruto is no ordinary child. He's a Jinchuriki, Homura argued. Normally, we should not even allow him to leave the village, should keep him under constant supervision. We are making compromises here. Naruto is already in an incredibly capable 4-man team, Tsunade said simply. And restricting his movements is out of the question. Even if I somehow agreed to it, even if he somehow did, Akatsuki would still pursue him. The Jinchuriki staying in the village didn't stop them from going after the Kazekage himself, after all. If we confine him to the village, Konoha itself will be in danger. If he's constantly on the move, the Akatsuki will be more hard-pressed to find him. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. Naruto has an incredible power. He is a great asset to Konoha. You are being flippant, Tsunade, Homura said. Speak like a Hokage. This caused Tsunade to stomp her foot down on the floor, actually shaking the room with the force. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm not going to lock away one of Konoha's most powerful shinobi. Then, can you truly guarantee that Naruto will not be taken by Akatsuki? Homura barked, raising his voice and giving Tsunade a stern glare. If Akatsuki takes the Kyuubi from Naruto, they will become an even greater threat to Konoha. Can you guarantee that this will not happen? Tsunade calmed down upon hearing this. To Homura and Koharu's surprise, the blonde Hokage smiled softly, a smile full of confidence. Naruto will not be taken. I have complete faith in that. And if that belief is mistaken, Koharu said, what will you do? The will of fire burns strongly in Naruto. He will never fall, that is a guarantee. Even if he would come close to it, he has Hyuga Hinata, Hitaki Kakashi, and Uchiha Sasuke by his side to support him. And should the impossible happen, should the Akatsuki kill the team and take the Kyuubi, placing Konoha and Fire Country in danger, then I will put my life on the line to save it, as Godime Hokage. A silence followed this. Clearly, Homura and Koharu didn't really know how to continue. Thankfully, they were smart enough not to use the same argument over and over. They knew that they couldn't play those cards anymore, and had to come up with a new tactic. Tsunade didn't let them start. I am the Hokage of Konoha. Not only that, but I am the head of the Senju clan. Naruto is a Konoha shinobi and member of the Senju clan. As a shinobi, what he does is up to me. As his head, the restrictions placed on his movements are decided by me. Not you. You two are advisors. You may give your opinion, and I'll take it into account, but don't order me around. This is not a democracy. Tsunade scoffed at the two old shinobi and stood up. How's that for speaking like a Hokage? You are still improving, Hyuga Hiashi said as he took a break from his training session with Hinata. They were sitting by the training ground, drinking tea. Hinata nodded silently, and Hiashi took this moment to give his daughter a studying glance. Is it the Senju boy? There was, as always, a tone of slight disapproval in his voice. But it wasn't disapproval toward Senju Naruto himself. He was disapproving toward anyone who wasn't a Hyuga. Hiashi didn't discriminate, after all. Naruto-kun's return has made me happier, father, but it's not him alone, Hinata said softly, a small smile appearing on her face. Our team is back together. It pains me to admit this, but being on the same team as the Uchiha and Senju has been good for you, Hiashi said, his eyes closing to demonstrate just how painful it was to admit that. They seem to be a great inspiration for you. Naruto-kun and Sasuke-kun are born leaders, father, Hinata said. They both inspire me to push on, even when it feels like I may have hit the peak of my potential. They have the ability to help you reach as high as you possibly can. Speak of the devil, Hiashi said suddenly, and just then, there were two blurs in front of them, revealing themselves to be Senju Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke. Yo! Naruto greeted, raising his hand. Hinata bowed her head in greeting, but Hiashi just closed his eyes in annoyance. This made Naruto furrow his brow. What? You're not gonna ask how we got in? Does it matter? You will just find another way to come here, Hiashi muttered, which caused Naruto to frown. Wow! Buzz kill. Hiashi's eyes snapped open to glare at Naruto, who flinched slightly at the intensity. Whoa, easy. I meant no offense. If you wanna be a buzz kill, good for you. Goes with the Hyuga head image. Go buzz killing. You're not making this situation any better, Sasuke quipped, noticing how Hiashi's frown got even harsher. Anyway, we need to borrow Hinata for a while. Why? Hiashi asked, not letting up his glare. Team training, Naruto said simply, walking up to them and placing a hand on Hinata's shoulder. Later. With that, Team 7, including Hinata, blurred away before Hiashi could argue. The three Chunin appeared in the clearing of their usual training ground. The massive forest Naruto had summoned had long since sunk back into the ground thanks to the blonde's manipulation, so it was open once more. Hinata looked from Sasuke to Naruto, seeing the two of them looking a bit uncomfortable. What kind of training do we need to do? She asked hesitantly. She didn't know if she wanted an answer, considering how embarrassed the duo looked. Well, we need to do some more teamwork exercises, Naruto muttered. It's embarrassing to admit, since we're all chunin, and we've known each other for so long, but the fact is, I wreak too much havoc in my fights. And I'm not exactly careful, either, Sasuke muttered. Yeah, I could barely use any of my Mokuden ninjutsu during that fight with Sasori, Naruto said. Since I'm not really careful, there was a chance I might hit you or the old lady with one of my stronger attacks. So we need to get a bit more organized. But, shouldn't Kakashi-sensei be here for that as well? We've already contacted him, but you know how tardy he is, Sasuke said, crossing his arms with a frown on his face. We'll get started on some simpler exercises until he gets here. A knock sounded on Tsunade's door, and when Tsunade called, "Enter," it opened to reveal Kakashi, who gave her a lazy wave. You wanted to see me, Hokage-sama. Yes, I want you to break the news to Naruto, because I really don't want to hear his whining, Tsunade said with a nod, which made Kakashi sweat drop as she reached into a drawer on her desk and pulled out a thick file, holding it out to the Junin. Team 7 is no longer on the missions list. What's this? Kakashi asked, taking the file and opening it. That is a new group I am putting together, Tsunade said, while Kakashi looked over the roster to see who else was in the group. The Niju Shoutai 20 platoons is being created for the sole purpose of hunting and killing the Akatsuki whenever they cross the border into Fire Country. I want your team in the group. Naruto would be upset about taking off the missions list, but I guess the thought of hunting Akatsuki would appease him a bit, if only slightly, Kakashi said softly. You said you want my team. I am well aware of how dangerous Akatsuki is, Kakashi, Tsunade said seriously. That is why joining the group is completely voluntary. Kakashi had a small frown on his face. There were many pros and cons to consider. Granted, putting Team 7 in the Niju Shoutai would make his students pleased, because it would give them a chance to fight Akatsuki. However, being on the team would take them off the missions list, and no one could know how long it would take until an Akatsuki encounter. Naruto might even manage to drive Kakashi crazy with complaints. But then, Asuma had joined, commanding Shikamaru, Izumo, and Katetsu, and Asuma would sure never let Kakashi hear the end of it if the Cycloptic Junin declined a job that the Sarutobi accepted. Very well, Kakashi said after a few seconds of silence, nodding at Tsunade. You can count on Team 7. Excellent, Tsunade said, a pleased smile on her face. Though, I wonder, Tsunade-sama, Kakashi muttered, raising his hand to rub his chin, why would you offer Naruto such a job? What do you mean? I'm certain you will never hear the end of this from the elders. I am just surprised you would take all that complaining for Naruto's sake, even if he is your grandson. Usually, I wouldn't bother, that's true, Tsunade said with a nod, but then smiled at Kakashi, but fact remains that Team 7 is probably the strongest shinobi team at my disposal. If anyone can take down an Akatsuki pair, it's you and your brats. Kakashi retained his normal lazy expression, but he was definitely surprised to hear that. While he was used to hearing about what an amazing Junin he was, though Naruto and Sasuke had been doing their damnedest to convince him otherwise during their spars, he had never been told by a Hokage that he was one of the strongest. Not even Minato told him that. I'm honored to hear that, Hokage-sama, he said, bowing his head. Just don't tell Naruto and Sasuke, Tsunade said as she returned to her paperwork, taking the file from Kakashi again. I don't want their heads getting any bigger than they already are. Well, welcome to the Niju Shoutai. You're dismissed. Right. So, what did you think? Love it? Hate it? Remember to leave a review. Peace. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys liked it. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like for more what ifs and support the author. See you guys in the next video.